camera back in order to... We're back with Largo Central Railroad's Steam Committee progress on the Hiawatha Hudson. First, we'll start up with an amendment on the lubricators, then we'll move on to paints, and then, for last, a steam test. Let's get into it. Let's start with the amendment on the DV7 lubricators, because halfway into this portion of the progression, the decision was made to swap out the DV7s for a Godshall lubricator. Change of plans. We're going to be replacing DV7s with a single lubricator on the other side. Rebecca, what's the manufacturer of the lubricator that you have in mind?
I bought a American Model Engineering lubricator.
Okay, an AME lubricator. While we had managed to get them both working and pumping oil out... Jackpot! It's pumping oil! One of the lubricators had a failed check valve, and thus was letting steam into the pot and pushing oil out of the top of it. This was especially abundant because that particular lubricator did not have a sliding door on the top of it. This is also without mentioning the fact that both DV7s had leaks in their sight glasses, with the fireman's side being the worst of them both.
Nylon tape?
Needless to say, the swap over to the Godshall feeder on one side was a necessary change, but in order to accommodate it, the lubricator mount had to be modified to sit lower on the crosshead. Okay, that's all for the lubricators. Let's get into the other bits. Starting off, the sealant for the power reverse valve was trimmed. The old whistle valve was still leaking, even with the new packing, so a new one was required and fitted.
I don't know if I'm gonna get quite that aggressive.
Yeah, not with...
I'm already beating it up, but...
We later brought it up to pressure with air to test it, making sure beforehand that the throttle was fully shut. During the between of two of the sessions, I went to my local hobby shop and bought some paints to test on the coupling rods. Now, I was advised by Rebecca that the paints that I was using here, in this case Tester's enamels, would likely get steam washed after a few sessions of operation under steam. I still went through with painting the rods, with Mike's prior approval, but before any paint was put on it, I cleaned the grease off of the rods with mineral spirits and acetone, and used a small blade to spot clean the stuff in the corners.
That is in Georgia.
After a few coats, the driver's side rods were looking a lot better, but I wasn't able to finish the rest of it that night, so I had to wait until the next week to come back to finish my work.
Guys want the lights off?
Meanwhile, big progress came on Rebecca's end with the lighting. She managed to sort out the wiring for the water glasses light, as well as fit lights in the cab interior.
Oh. Ready?
Fit LEDs for the marker lamps. However, during this session, where I had started painting, she had to do a bit of welding repair. One of the retaining brackets for the feed pipes had come loose from a broken weld. The shop was opened up for air to circulate, and with the loco clear of anyone else nearby, she welded the mount back into place. After the Sunday public run that month, we pressed on. The new hardware for the injectors came in, so Santino fitted the hardware
Bits of,
while I continued painting the rods.
Yeah, I did mention. I did add something along the lines of. And if you're wondering, and just for context of the time I'm taking this footage, the weather has in fact turned to Florida. So.
It is raining!
Yes, it is in fact raining. So.
And thundering!
However, once they were fully seated, we ran into an issue. There was back pressure coming from the fireman's side injector. After disassembly and inspection, we gave the valve a tiny amount of steam oil to see if it would move. But we'll see how the injectors worked out later on. The other side's injector and the axle pump did not have these issues, but we still added the same amount of oil to each just in case. Thank you. Speaking of water injection, we come over to the tender at this time.
Right, so before we even steam up his tender, there are a few things that we need to address first off. Firstly, there's a hose that is missing off of the main steam injector on the fireman's side. That needs to be procured. Number two, as you noticed, the plates on the top of the tender had been taken off. Also, earlier, before I even started filming all this, Santino, who's right behind camera,
Hello.
sprayed the interior of the tender with a Flex Seal coating. This is a waterproof coating. What we discovered in the interim was that patches that we discovered in here are viable enough that we do not need this tender to go to a rebedding and sandblasting company to get sandblasted and rebedded. So that is why we are utilizing the Flex Seal coating on the tender instead. So the whole goal for this now is that once everything is all sorted out on the locomotive end and the tender end, we will do a test steaming.
Meanwhile, I had finished painting the rods on the driver's side. However, the rods on the fireman's side were unable to be fully worked on, as they were at the 3 o'clock position, meaning that the connecting rods were blocking the front portion of the coupling rods.
Okay, so where that injector hose goes is literally around this path right here. But unfortunately, I don't have anything to use for heat in order to heat up the pipe in order to fit it, so wish me luck. This is probably going to be a little bit more difficult than I thought it would. Proving to be more easier than I thought it would be. Yep. Proved to be easier than I thought it would be. So. The thing with this clamp is I have to get it far enough back there for it to actually sit. But I have to get it far enough away from it so that when I tighten it, I can get close enough to it so that when I finally sit it, it's right on the join where it connects, and I think I just got it right. So now, drill bit, this would be better, but unless I have a flathead screwdriver for this job. It's not completely ideal, but at least doing it by hand doesn't over tighten. cause problems. Okay, I got it. Okay, there we go. And then afterwards, we can just cut this to the length we need. And bada bing, bada boom. We have it.
And with that hose fitted in and clamped, the tender was pretty much ready.
GoPro is live.
Well, as soon as the Flex Seal cured. That Flex Seal would be cured by Sunday, but that day was reserved for sandblasting. Up first on the blasting table, though, was the renumbered Florida East Coast number 430's truck frames. Next up would be the air reservoir and the front frame supports. As this was going on, though, I got distracted, as nearby the shop there was a railroad, and I heard a train. The day for the first steam test of the Hiawatha had come. When I had arrived, the tender had already been moved out into position. Once everyone had arrived, we carefully moved the big locomotive into position, placing it up the grade so that the inner firebox could be covered in water as much as possible.
Okay.
It is now. This is normal position, right here.
This was going to be a tumultuous moment for us. This locomotive had not been fired up in over a decade. First, we filled the tender full of water.
Yeah, I put the Flex Seal around the edges.
Then we put in the specified amount of LSB 8000 into the tender or water supply. By using a sump pump fitted inside the tender, we filled up the boiler via the drainage valve with the treated water to about 3/4 of the way as shown on the gauge glass. Once the final checks were performed, it was soon time to put a fire in her.
Alright, well, let's see how this goes.
Okay. Now, before we continue, I must go over the process of how to safely fire up a propane burner. First, you take your lighter.
Alright, here we go.
You turn your lighter on first.
Lighten up.
Lower it into the fire hole door. Then slowly open the propane valve until the burners light up.
Burr light.
Now, all quite simple, really. But what we didn't account for was the strong draft the locomotive had while hooked up to air. So every time Santino tried to light it, the lighter flame would either go out or...
Ooh, Jesus Christ.
Flareback would occur. This happened at least 4 times. All of them, though, also being extinguished by the draft.
Fire on.
On attempt 4, we switched to the blowtorch, as that would have a more constant flame than a regular barbecue lighter.
Here we go. 3, 2, 1. Did you cut the fire or did you keep it going?
The pressure was still up.
On the 5th attempt, we finally got it to light.
Now you should shut it down and start all over again so you remember what you did.
But she's already got pressure up in air, too.
Now it was a waiting game, as the air pressure dropped and the steam pressure started to take hold.
Got a healthy bit of wood going on over here. I don't like that.
The Hiawatha Hudson, number 1938, had reached 135 psi. However, this test was not over yet, as we now had to see if the injectors worked. On locomotives of this gauge, the process to inject water into the boiler is twofold. First, you open the taps on the tender of the locomotive to let the water into the feeds. Next, you open the steam taps on the backhead to let steam force the water into the boiler.
Oh, there you go. That one. If there was any type of overflow where there's too much water, see like that, now I can start to back some of the water down. Yes. But if I back up too much, I'll get steam coming back into it, and then it'll heat up the injector, and the injector won't work. But I'm doing good right there. Okay, so that's really simple.
The injectors on the F7 Hudson were a bit touch and go, to say the least. Both fed water in, but the feeding on one wasn't great. It turned out that the engineer's side check valve needed more work, as eventually it failed.
I guess the check just failed.
So the steam test had to end there. But that wasn't the only problem we faced.
I do not like that jumping. It's not getting us an accurate reading. No.
Despite the locomotive not moving, the water level in the gauge glass was bouncing. This can be caused by a number of factors, either by dirty water, too much steam usage, or too much fire on the burners. Whatever the case, this was serious enough to cause concern.
Sounds like my cat when I disturb him.
It's just how they work.
After the failure of the driver's side check valve, that was what really ended the test.
There you go.
But not all the way up.
Hey guys, Mark here. I don't have anything written down in the script that follows these specific clips, but basically after the fire was put out, we did some operational checks for certain mechanical components of the locomotive, mainly the reversing mechanism, and of course the whistle. We had a little bit of fun there with the whistle. Basically anything that we could do without operating the throttle of the locomotive, because obviously it was on the stand. So this is what's going to follow on for the next few minutes until the boiler pressure reaches to below 50 psi, so we can do the blowdown procedure. Alright, thank you.
Slap their hand on
That's
you.
why we want to have a cord.
Yeah.
They're just gonna...
Plus, yeah, here. If you know the old Mickey Mouse commercial,
Yeah.
Jingle Bells is this.
Yeah, but you see where I'm coming from though.
Yes. So we did that.
And when the pressure dropped down to around 50 psi, the blowdown procedure could begin.
Go for it. 3, 2, 1. That
1. 2. 3. 4. 5. 6. 7. 8. 9. 10. 11. 12. 13. 14. 15. 16. 17. 18. 19. 20. 21. 22. 23. 24. 25. 26. 27. 28. 29. 30. 31. 32. 33. 34. 35. 36. 37. 38. 39. 40. 41. 42. 43. 44. 45. 46. 47. 48. 49. 50. 51. 52. 53. 54. 55. 56. 57. 58. 59. 60. 61. 62. 63. 64. 65. 66. 67. 68. 69. 70. 71. 72. 73. 74. 75. 76. 77. 78. 79. 80. 81. 82. 83. 84. 85. 86. 87. 88. 89. 90. 91. 92. 93. 94. 95. 96. 97. 98. 99. 100. 101. 102. 103. 104. 105. 106. 107. 108. 109. 110. 111. 112. 113. 114. 115. 116. 117. 118. 119.
running because we need to clean out the mudroom over here.
Go. Into the water goes.
You know that bucket's gonna weigh 40 pounds when it's full, right?
I know.
She steams, but she needs some more work done to it. Right now, she's cooling down. And once she's cooled down to a good enough temperature, we'll push her back into the workshop. Once she's back inside the workshop, we can finally put this thing back on her. After she was in the workshop, me, Rebecca, Santino, and Dominic went out for a 10 p.m. dinner to celebrate. We had basically gotten best 2 out of 3, as we fired up the locomotive and got it up to full pressure. But the injectors would still need some work done before it could go out onto the railroad. But once we came back,
She's still warm.
the boiler
but
was
she's
cool enough
warm
to touch.
touch.
So before we left it that night, I put the boiler empty sign back on number 1938,
I'll go ahead.
and we all went our separate ways home.
Alright. Okay, number 1938. Sweet dreams.
And this is where I will leave off for this video. Next time, it's moving day. We'll be taking her to Largo and doing a proper shakedown before the Christmas season. We'll see you then.